Hello and welcome to another Directions Media webinar sponsored by the Pennsylvania State University. Today's webinar focuses Geospatial Education, Multiple Pathways for Success, Surveying the Community College Educational Landscape. Hi, my name is Joe Francica. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Directions Magazine, and I will be your host along with Wes Stroh of Penn State, who will be your moderator today. We're going to focus on the choices that individuals have in both their career and education paths in geospatial technology, and we thank you for joining us for this webinar. As you can see on the map that will be presented to you, we have a large global audience that has registered. Over 250 people are joining us today from a variety of industries, including advertising and insurance and transportation, as well as in education, and some of you who may be looking for jobs. Regardless of your industry affiliation, we're confident that today's webinar will have something of value for you. We're also going to honor your time today by finishing within the hour. We also encourage you to ask questions. This is certainly your time. In your control panel, there is a section called Questions. You can open up that dialog box, and you can do this at any time during the webinar, and we'll respond to as many of the questions that you have in our session at the very end of our webinar. Whatever questions we are not able to field in the allotted time, we will certainly be sure to follow up with you in an email after the webinar has concluded, so don't hesitate to ask questions. Also, what I wanted to remind you of is that we're going to be taking a few polls today. So we ask you to really respond to those as straightforward as possible. They're going to help our panelists determine what your interests are, so it really helps if you can give us some feedback in that end. Finally, a copy of today's webcast is going to be recorded, and all of you who have registered for today will be receiving an email with a link that you can view this on demand at some future time. You can certainly pass that on to colleagues as well. And we're also going to take a brief survey when we have completed. So as you exit the webinar today, we're going to see how you thought that we've met your expectations. So please give us some feedback. Maybe tell us what you'd like to see in a future webinar as well. If you're not familiar with Directions Magazine and all of the things that we have to offer at Directions Media, we have 2 daily publications, our flagship product, Directions Magazine, as well as our All Points blog, the longest continually running blog that will keep you updated on breaking news in the geospatial technology sector. We also have industry channels. These are specific to your interest. We have channels based on remote sensing and state and local government and location intelligence. So we ask you to check those out. I think there'll be a helpful way to keep up to date for the news of the day. We also want to remind everybody that we have our Rocket City Geospatial Conference for 2011 coming up November 15th to 16th in Huntsville. Finally, just a few thoughts on what's going on today with our webinar. We're going to address the opportunities in geospatial education for those entering college or those currently employed but looking to increase their skills. We will also present information for educators and how a new set of guidelines are helping to provide self-assessment of course and curriculum development that enables them to teach the skills most in demand by today's employers. We're at a critical juncture in geospatial technology where there will be more jobs available than the number of trained professionals that exist. So while your skills will be in demand, it may behoove you to take a look at how to make yourself even more valuable as community colleges look to offer more training. It's now my pleasure to introduce Wes Stroh. Wes is an instructor at Penn State in their online certificate and master's in GIS program. Wes has a BA in history from Arizona State University and also a degree, a certificate in network design analysis from the University of Denver. Wes, it's my pleasure to hand over the events of today's webinar to you. Thanks for hosting.
Thanks, Joe, and probably more important, a master's in geography, but no, I'm kidding there.
Right.
I'm pleased that everybody's joining us for our 5th webinar in the series Inside Geospatial Education and Research, and I'm also pleased to announce that we're going to be continuing the series into the coming year. We've enjoyed the partnership with Directions Media, and we look forward to bringing you many more interesting topics inside our entire enterprise, but focusing primarily on education and research. Before I continue on to the agenda, though, we have our first poll of the webinar today, and we'd just like to get the audience all kind of in tune on what everybody's background is on the call today. And so regarding geospatial education, do you currently possess no formal training or no formal credential? Do you have an associate's degree relating to geospatial education? Perhaps a bachelor's degree in geospatial education? Maybe you finished your bachelor's and have done some kind of professional or graduate certificate in geospatial education, or perhaps you've got a master's or more advanced degree. So go ahead and take a couple seconds there and choose the one that fits you. We've got about 60% of our audience voting. We'll give you a couple more seconds there. And I think we've got some interesting results today. We're at about 85% now. Give it just a couple more seconds if you don't mind, Joe. And seem to be slowing down on the voting, so maybe we can go ahead and close the poll. And I am certainly interested in our results today. A little surprised, frankly. 29% of you are indicating that you've got no formal training or credentials. So hopefully we've got something really of value for you. Many of the rest of you may be at some other point in your career considering what to do next, or you may be an educator thinking about what to do with your students. And so you're definitely on the right call today. On our agenda, I want to thank Joe for welcoming us and for giving us some thoughts to consider as we progress through today's call. I'm pleased that we have joining us today Ann Johnson, who is going to address the career path conundrum, as we've decided to call it, and think a little bit about the role of community colleges in education specific to the geospatial enterprise. We also have Dr. Phil Davis joining us, Director of Geotech and Faculty and Director of the Del Mar College GIS Program. He's going to talk a little bit more about that program and then hopefully paint a bigger picture on geotech, at which point Ann is going to come back and help us understand what the work geotech is doing regarding the GTCM. And the GTCM, if you were on last September's webinar, the first one in our series, is the Geospatial Technology Competency Model. And it also has an impact on those new job categories that the Department of Labor announced for our field last year. And we're going to talk about how that affects programs and workforce skills. So it's really important in terms of professional development. And it's one of the reasons why we're stepping out of talking about the Penn State program today, because of course lots of programs, lots of educational institutions are engaging with the GTCM, with the new job categories, and with thinking about how to assess their programs and make sure that their programs are best preparing their students professionally for the workforce. I just want to give a quick nod to our recently departed but certainly not forgotten former program manager David DiBiase, and this process and program and research was very close to his heart. It's one of the reasons why we're including it in the series. David's now out at ESRI in Redlands, having left the Penn State family this summer. But David was very involved with Phil and Ann and Phil, and we're very pleased to be bringing this important work. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Ann Johnson. Ann is the Associate Director of Geotech, retired from Esri in 2010 after 13 years as the Higher Education Manager. In that role, she helped colleges and universities develop GIS programs, was one of the editors for the UC GIS&T Body of Knowledge, was part of the working group that developed the criteria for qualifications to become a GIS professional, holds a BS and an MS degree in geology, and in 1995, while teaching earth sciences at a community college, became interested in geospatial technology through the GIS for the 21st Century NSF grant. Ann is really committed to helping community college educators introduce spatial thinking, geospatial technology, and all related topics to students. And Ann also has a special place about working with educators to help build the geospatial workforce. Ann, welcome.
Thank you, Wes. Traditionally, at least in the U.S., the steps up the stairs of education did not include community colleges. Parents hoped that their children would successfully progress from primary to middle to high school, and along the way somehow decide what they wanted to be when they grew up. Young adults with their diploma in hand either went to a university to continue their higher education or went right to the work and then looked to a lifelong career and retirement. Community college was seen as a stopgap measure for those students that could not qualify for admission to a university from high school or who couldn't afford to go to a university. Or it was viewed as a way to get 2 more years of education to qualify for, a specific vocation such as respiration therapist or nursing or construction. No longer are these the only roles, though, for community colleges. Workers no longer stay in one career for a lifetime. They need to be able to change career pathways multiple times as technology renders some careers obsolete and opens new careers that did not exist before, or maybe their current career requires new technology. The workforce must be lifelong learners, understanding that they will have to update, upgrade, or retool their skills for an ever-changing career pathway, and this can happen multiple times. Community colleges are one place to do that. As new skills and competencies are identified by industry, the workforce can acquire those skills and competencies at colleges by taking specific courses or earning additional certificates and degrees as needed. There are almost 1,200 two-year colleges in the U.S. They may be called community, technical, junior, or tribal colleges, but all focus on lower division courses and programs. Many do offer associate degrees that lead to transfer to a university, but they also offer varying length certificates in many different disciplines. That includes geospatial technology. Their certificates can provide that multiple path opportunity for the lifelong learning with programs that are low cost, cater to the local needs of their community, with flexible schedules for the workforce, and pretty basic admittance requirements. Many also now offer online program options. For geospatial education, community colleges have been developing programs since the mid-1980s. This map from the GeoTech Center webpage includes the locations of those colleges. There are more than 450 here with some type of geospatial programs, including standalone courses, certificates, or degrees. I'd like to introduce Dr. Phillip Davis. He's the director of GeoTech Center, but today he's going to be wearing the hat as he directs the program at Del Mar Community College.
Thank you, Ann. Hello, everybody. My name is Phillip Davis. Again, I'm from Del Mar College. You can see our logo and a picture of our new West Campus there. Also a map showing the 3 campuses around the bay there in Corpus Christi, Texas. We are located in South Texas, just south of San Antonio, about 2 hours. We are a what I would call a combined rural-urban area. We are a town of about 250,000, surrounded by 1 million acres of agriculture and ranch land, one of which might be the King Ranch. I'd like to talk a little bit about Del Mar's program in terms of what we offer as an example of GIS, and then we will look at 2 students. Our program, our GIS program, started in 2000 with an AAS degree. In that time, we've educated about 100 graduates, 8 to 10 annually. More than 90% of these have been employed in the geospatial field within the local area. Less than 10% of these, however, have transferred to upper-level college, and there are obstacles and barriers there that we're working on. The majority of our students are older than traditional. They're greater than 26 years of age, and most of them are seeking retraining in technology to expand their career options. I'd like to look at 2 of our students now. This is Joe Mady Lozano. Joe Mady came to our program in the fall of 2003. 7-year-old Hispanic single mother of 3 with no college education. She attended part-time for 3 years, focusing on her GIS technology courses while working part-time at other jobs. I was her internship instructor and placed her in an internship with American Electric and Power in 2006, where she's been there since 2006, working full-time with their GE Small World GIS application. And she is truly one of our success stories. This is the type of person that we serve primarily here at the community college. Matter of fact, Jo Mady's come so far in terms of her own professional development along with her academic development. We asked her 2 years ago to actually sit on our industry advisory board. So if you can imagine a woman coming to us, you know, with no formal education, taking our courses, going to work at a major electrical corporation here in the U.S., and coming back within just a short period of about 5 years and being asked to sit on an advisory board. That shows you the path that community colleges can offer non-traditional students. The other thing that's kind of interesting about Jo Mady is she has not actually completed our degree yet. Our second student here is Lee Yorns. Lee, again, is non-traditional. She's a single mother, retired military, actually, spent 20 years in the U.S. Army. She's recently divorced, and 2 of her adult children still live with her. Her background is in computers, so she had a good background for the technology in terms of coming in. But basically, before she retired, is something that was of interest to her. Found GIS through one of our GIS days, became very interested in it, and decided that she was going to go ahead and come to Del Mar and complete our GIS degree. There we taught her ESRI products and other technology pertinent to what she needed for her employer. And Lee, about a year ago, was placed in an internship with EOG, which is Energy, Oil, and Gas, one of the large energy companies in South Texas. We are a primary petroleum area. And she performs your typical desktop technician pipelines there. Because of her age, her advanced age in terms of college students, Lee is on the plus side of 50. She shares with us that she has no intention of going beyond her AAS degree that she's now earned, because she is only 6 to 7 years away from retirement. So she's quite happy with where the community college has been able to place her. So these are good success stories, I think, that give us an idea of what you can do. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about Del Mar's College itself, the program, the GIS program. We started the program in 2000 with an AAS degree. At that time, that seemed to be the correct function. It was purely a technician degree. We assumed students would be coming in from high school with no academic hours. That program served us very well, I'd say, for the first 5 years. And as we've noticed that a lot of students now are non-traditional, and that they have started to come in seeking not a full AAS degree, which can take 2 to 3 years to complete, but actually certificates, and so that's what we're focusing on. The other thing about our program is we do articulate with a local university, Texas A&M University, which has a 4-year geomatics and surveying program. But because they require such heavy math, university calculus and calculus-based physics just to enter as a freshman, that's been a real barrier for our students. So we have moved away from the traditional 60 to 70 credit hour associate's degree and more towards the 20 to 30 credit hour, because what our local industries are telling us is they need people with the GIS skills immediately. And again, a lot of these people are, as you have seen, older, and they have the professional skills through life experience, a lot of them. All right. Our program, if you go to the next slide, our program, like a lot of programs nationwide, seek certification or identification with some kind of skill standards. And so Del Mar program is unique in that we do align with what's called the Texas Skills Standard Board. This was a standard that we helped establish on the local or statewide level there in the state of Texas back in 2007, and then we had to basically petition against the TSSB to be able to review. We received their Gold Star Award, and now our students have these seals that are on their certificate, and that was an industry standard. That standard led to or helped complete the GTCM, which you heard a little bit about, and Ann will talk a little bit more in just a second here. And the GTCM is a nationwide standard where, of course, the TSSB is one example of a state standard. Our program is going to undergo review like many of our partners over the next year, and we do intend to be completely compliant in alignment with them by the fall of 2012. Some of our local employees have enjoyed employment with such large companies as American Electric and Power or EOG Resources, which have, of course, offices across the U.S. So I would say utility companies are certainly a big user of our graduates. The local appraisal district, Texas Department of Transportation. Corpus is a town of a lot of small engineering firms, so a lot of surveying and engineering firms have used us. We are, like I said earlier, an agriculture, high precision agricultural sales and service. And then, of course, your typical municipal and county governments, which are always large numbers of employers in most two-year programs across the nation. Our pay scales have ranged from the mid-20s when we first started to the mid-30s currently. The thing I would like to say is that we now have graduates like you've seen, like Joe Mady, that have been in a job steadily for 5 to 7 years. So I think we have some good long-term success and would like to continue so. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. And we're going to turn to poll number 2 now as we kind of try to make this connection between the educational experience and this thing we've been mentioning called the GTCM, or the Geospatial Technology Competency Model. Some of you may recall, if you were on the call, the webinar last September where we investigated this very specifically with David DiBiase. And we want to really relate that to your own professional development. Again, we're doing that somewhat from the community college perspective today. But we'd like to know, how many of you even know what the GTCM is? So if you can choose from the choices we've got, yes, and I actually understand how the competencies help me define my professional growth. Yes, I know they exist, but I really don't understand their value. Or maybe you're thinking to yourself, what the heck is a GTCM? So go ahead and take a minute. No surprise here, over half of you have already suggested that you're not even really sure what the GTCM is. Well, we'll talk about that. We've got about 70% in. I'm just going to give it a few more seconds here, Joe, if you don't mind. Okay. And that's probably good. I think we're tapering off right there. Not entirely surprised here. If you take a look at the results, 21% of you say that you do know what the GTCM is and you understand how the competencies relate. And my guess is that we have a lot of educators in that group because folks are really tuning into how, as educators, we need to be using the GTCM to think about defining our curriculum. 27% of you say, yes, I know they exist, but I'm really not sure how they relate. Well, hopefully we'll answer some of those questions here in a minute. And for the 52% of you that don't know what the GTCM is, hopefully we'll investigate that for you as well. And we'll have some links at the end so you can do some follow-up, which we'll also email you in our thank you letter. So hang on to that thought if this is all news to you. Go ahead and hand it back to Phil for a second here. And Phil, I think you're going to talk briefly about GeoTech and then introduce Ann again.
Thank you. The center itself was started in 2008. We're a collection of 10 colleges and universities from coast to coast. And our goal is to create sustainability among our programs. One of the things that really challenges two-year community college programs is how do we sustain these in tough economic times. We're challenged by curriculum, we're challenged by industry. A lot of times we're challenged by universities that we serve in terms of trying to articulate with them. And so what we have done at the GeoTech Center is we have tried to use a national standard, which is a GTCM, to help align our two-year community college programs so that we can say that we truly do meet industry standards, because we are primarily charged, most community college programs are charged with serving a local industry. And so we are trying to generate sustainability in our programs in terms of making sure that our curriculums are all aligned in some fashion if we can with that. And so that I would say is probably the most important thing that the center offers. To expand beyond our geographical boundaries at Del Mar, we do intend to incorporate distance learning programs into our current face-to-face. We're also looking at blended hybrid mode instruction, face-to-face and distance learning. We would like to reach out to remote students. We know there's a lot of underserved students in the Houston area, for example, which is about 250 miles from Corpus Christi. Their programs up there simply cannot produce enough technicians for the oil and gas. So we would like to be able to reach those underserved students to connect with better instructors, if you will, some of the best instructors through remote. Finally, our goal is to become 100% aligned with the GTCM model courses and certificates. I think that Ann is going to talk about here next.
Thanks, Phil. This is our logo from the GeoTech Center. The GeoTech Center is a National Science Foundation grant for advanced technology education. And our primary mission is to help community colleges better meet the needs of the industry for qualified geospatial workforce. The GeoTech Center National Community College Program map indicates where the 450 colleges are. We do know that there are more than the 450 colleges shown here, and we hope if your college is not listed, you'll send us the information to add you to the program. What we have learned, though, from our research in creating this geodatabase is that program content and length of programs vary a great deal because there are no standards as to what should be included in geospatial programs. So there is a problem. How can a community college determine what a program should include and what should be taught in those new programs? For geospatial technology, defining the content of a program has been a problem. It's also been a problem for colleges and universities. In fact, the #1 question I would hear from educators as higher education manager at ESRI was, what should I teach? What should my program include? And what skills and competencies should be covered? Educators would ask if there was any standards on which to base a curriculum. And the answer was generally no. In 2006, the University Consortium for Geographic Information Science published the UC-GIS Body of Knowledge. This helped identify the breadth of knowledge for GIS&T, but it wasn't easy to use to create a course or a program. Then the Department of Labor began creating competency models for high-demand industries. These Department of Labor employment and training initiatives created the competency model structure to help define the skills and competencies needed by the workforce for specific high-demand industries. This is a pyramid of building blocks, and it's designed to be comprehensive and accessible. It is available from their website. It's not just, though, a static document. Each of the blocks are linked to more information about a specific skill. By clicking on a block, another page will open and you can see the details. The GTCM is built on tiers that start with, at its base, the foundational competencies, and you can see the personal effectiveness. These are the ones that, almost every occupation would include very similar ones. But as you move to higher and higher tiers, the blocks become more and more specific to a DOL-defined occupation. The geospatial industry is one of 19 industries that have had a competency model studied. It was in draft form when the GeoTech Center was funded by the NSF. GeoTech began helping the Department of Labor with a lead by David DiBiase to finalize the draft GTCM. The full details of this whole process and the methodology is available from the Archive Directions webinar. In June 2010, the Department of Labor did approve the GTCM with tiers 1 to 5. Included were competencies, those foundational ones, but also workforce and industry sector competencies. Tiers 6 and 7 are occupational specific competencies, and these weren't defined in this original draft and approval. These are being defined by the work of the GeoTech Center through a process called DACUM, or developing a curriculum. It's a process where you bring 8 to 12 expert workers in an occupation, put them in a room for 2 days, and have them sit down and say exactly what they do, how they do it, and what skills they think and knowledge they need to do their work. The center is most interested in, though, the technician or technologist level occupations. But I need to emphasize that the GTCM and the defined skills and competencies are for all levels and all classes of occupations, and they can be used by geospatial researchers and scientists as well as the technicians. For the center, luckily, the Department of Labor has also created new occupational codes. This ONET site lists the new occupational codes and provides links to each of those occupations that you include some skills and competencies. If you click on any one of the occupation titles, you can get more information, and it includes a salary range, so it is pretty interesting. But it is rather limited in scope and really doesn't provide enough information for anyone to create a curriculum or to know exactly what the skills and competencies are for any specific occupation. You can see the different ones there. They're bright, they're green, technology. What the GeoTech Center did was to create a new program assessment tool based on the GTCM. It was created by a GeoTech partner, Chris Samajian, at Gainesville State College, and is based on a tool that David DiBiase from Penn State created. It's an Excel workbook with spreadsheets that can be used to assess a program or the skills and competencies of an individual. Again, while it was created by the center, this tool is also good for any level of program, whether a college, university, or even a graduate program. In fact, Penn State has used it to assess their programs. The workbook has spreadsheets listing the GTCM competencies. You can see the scale up at the upper part at lines 6 to 10, where it goes from 0 or no awareness to 5 with synthesis and evaluation. So each one of the competencies are based on a modified Bloom's taxonomy. Each of the lines then are filled out using that scale. The assessment tool could be used by an individual to evaluate their knowledge or indicate areas where they need additional training, or it could even be used by industry to indicate the knowledge required for a specific job opening. This is an example of the use of the GTCM assessment tool to assess the program at Gainesville State College. The graphic circles can help visualize the focus areas of the program, identify gaps, and help faculty to better align the topics across the certificate program. I know it was very informative when Penn State completed theirs. Looking at Record 14 and seeing how the different courses in the program address the topic from, if you look at the first column in the Intro to GIS for interpersonal skills, it was rated as a 3, so comprehension and application. You can see as they go through different courses, they were stressing different levels, and by the internship, it's a 5 where they're synthesizing and evaluating. This program assessment tool, it can be used by students too to look at a program. So if I'm a student coming in, I can see maybe what courses I should take in order to get the skills that I need. This Excel document is available from the GeoTech Center website. We're also creating an online version of the tool, which will be available soon, as well as a new tool that's really specific to the skills and competencies for geospatial technicians. Well, again, this is a list. Even though we now have the more complete GTCM, we still need more information to better create curriculum and curriculum guidelines. The center is working on providing workshops for educators to come in and create course outlines for specific courses. We've already created 2 outlines, one for an awareness course and one for a Introduction to Geospatial Technology course. We're going to do 2 more workshops for academics in September in Denver on 2 additional courses, one a spatial analysis and the other one data management and acquisition. In all, we hope to complete at least 8 model course outlines, and we hope to include additional DACM events. We're focusing on remote sensing as our next set of DACMs. The final steps, though, would be to take these outlines and create example model courses and example model certificates so that someone wanting to use these would have really good examples of models. I want to stress that they're models. It is still very important to have a local industry advisory committee help you modify them to meet the local needs. Some future activities that you may hear about or be interested in, I mentioned the 2 workshops for the model course outlines, but also we're going to hold a Geospatial Educator Summit in May in Atlanta, Georgia, and we hope to have not only community colleges but also to include K-12 and university educators. We want to have the models and the assessment tools there, and we want to discuss how all of these can be used to create programs, create articulation, and identify GE courses. One other exciting activity of the center is the new National Geospatial Technology Skills Competition for community college students. I want to mention, too, that many of our students are working professionals that have degrees already that are coming back for that retooling for their lifelong careers. And for the competition itself, the round 1 is an exam based on the GTCM. In round 2, the students create a 6-minute video of a project they've created, which are judged by a panel of GISPs. The top 6 are then selected to go on to round 3, which is presentations and judging at the EdUC conference in San Diego. Right now, the registration is open for the next round. The exam will be available September 1, and we will have 6 students going on to ESRI next summer.
Phil, do you want to give us a brief recap of what's going on at the center and how you may be empowering some colleges?
Yeah, we, like Ann said, we will be completing these model course outlines hopefully by the end of summer of 2012. They will be put out on our website in a what we call a SCORM compliant format, that is a content management system or a course management system like Blackboard or Moodle or Desire to Learn or Angel. We will have them packaged so that educators can download them, expand them onto their own course management system, and begin using them with some modifications for their local industry needs pretty quickly. Also, I'd like to point out that we do have an upcoming webinar with Directions Media in November. I believe it's scheduled, it's scheduled during the Geography Week, and it might even be scheduled on GIS Day, which is pretty neat. And we're going to talk solely on the GTCM, because by that time we will have completed 4 of these courses. We'll have a lot more knowledge about exactly what this material is going to look like that we're going to be producing by the end of next summer. And I think especially the educators at all levels, K-12, secondary, and university, will be very interested in that webinar, which will be hosted again here on Directions Media. Certainly people from industry will be interested in that, because what we're trying to do again is get the alignment of the academic programs and our graduates closer and closer to what the industry has said that we really needed. So right. I'll conclude with that, Joe.
Great. Yeah, and I think that webinar is going to be on November 17th, so we'll watch for notices for that event.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Joe, and thanks, Nora, for popping up that November 17th date. Just once again, if folks want to mark that on your calendar. And I want to pop up the additional resources slide. Thanks for getting that, Joe. Don't worry, folks. If you don't, you can't jot all this down. It's quite a lot. We're going to have a follow-up note coming out to you thanking you for joining us today. And so in that note, we'll include a whole bunch of resources, including how do you access the Geospatial Technology Competency Model, which is at careeronestop.org. How do you access the Directions Media Penn State webinar last year, upon which we had David DiBiase talking about the GTCM and the new geospatial job categories from the Department of Labor. There's a real long URL for that, but we've got that archived, and you're welcome to look at that too. In addition, some of those job categories that Ann was showing, you can go to onenetonline.org and search geospatial, and that's where you're going to come up with the job categories that then feed to the GTCM. And lastly, we want to, of course, provide a link to the GeoTech Center, which is geotechcenter.org. And I think now we have actually plenty of time for questions, and as we turn to our panel, I'm actually going to ask Joe Francica to join the panel today. I'll be handling the questions, although I might have to answer 1 or 2 from the Penn State perspective. But one thing I do want to point out for our listeners, and you know, you've been watching the content from this webinar, you can see that we're really talking to 2 audiences here. We're speaking to students and folks in the workforce who are thinking about how to apply this stuff from a personal perspective. We're also speaking to educators who are thinking about how to apply this in their program management and curriculum development. And so as we work through the questions, I'm going to try to kind of craft those so our panel will focus on either or one audience or the other, or be real distinct on who they're speaking to. Our first question that we want to start off with, I think, is definitely coming from the students' side of the perspective. A lot of people upon registration asked variations on the same question, which is, how can I advance or improve my professional skill set? And I think that that's probably the single most important question, which is a good place for us to start. Phil, would you like to begin responding to that one?
Sure. There's a lot of possible answers to that one, Wes, but I would say what makes community colleges unique is that we do change our curriculum based upon what industry has told us they need, so we can change pretty quickly. I would also say that if you look at community colleges, their geospatial programs, you'll notice that a lot of their offerings are certificate-based, which I think I expressed earlier was a real desirable option for a lot of people trying to retrain or retool themselves, especially if they're a Postbaccalaureate and maybe they've already got a bachelor's degree in geography or chemistry, biology, whatever it might be, and they're looking for a skill that will get them into a new job or maybe qualify them even within their current organization for a new job. Certainly one of those fast-track certificates when you're at local community college is a good option. Also, you have to think what skills are in demand. And that's going to vary from area to area, but I know probably the #1 skill that we're seeing for two-year graduates or people from certificates from two-year programs would be if you can code in languages that are used in geospatial, then you certainly you got a leg up on your competition.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, thank you. Ann or Joe, do either of you want to take that? Maybe Joe, do you want to take that from the perspective of what you're seeing kind of from the journalist perspective in the industry?
Well, you know the best way to really enhance, I think, your professional development is read as much as you can out there and really try to, more closely define what it is your interests are. I mean, there's a lot of passionate people out here in geospatial, and because it's a fun technology to be in right now, both from the enterprise side where people are working on spatial analysis and getting the job done for a variety of both commercial and government jobs. Then, of course, there's the whole mobile issue. Mobile location-based services really has yet to pop. We see a lot of basic applications out there, navigation, some tourism applications, but really we haven't scratched the surface yet on all of the things that will be going on in the mobile field. So I would put it in those two camps, both the enterprise and the mobile side, that people may want to look at.
Thanks. Ann, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would say the other thing is that people have, whether you're students or you're in the workforce right now, is that you have to think about your own professional development, your lifelong learning path, and go out there, and you may not know exactly what the next thing is coming along, but there's a lot of opportunities to learn new things, and whether it's at Penn State or a community college, take control of your own lifelong learning and your career pathways and your professional development. Don't stop.
I think that's a great perspective, and the only thing I'd add to that is, when you're enrolled in a program, when you're taking courses, talk to your faculty. They're great resources, and so many of us in the geospatial realm come from an applied background that we like to talk to students about that kind of thing. So, Ann, I'd like to direct this question to you, and then if any others want to jump onto it. But I think we've addressed it in the webinar, but I think it certainly merits underscoring. A few folks, and this comes from the educator side of the audience, have asked, how can we better align our curricula to industry standards? I think we've certainly answered that question, but is there anything you'd like to reiterate from today's call?
Well, I think really take a look at the program assessment tool that's out there right now, especially if you're a 4-year institution. That's an excellent tool. Go through, have your faculty look at it, find out what they're teaching, because what many institutions are finding is that the same topic may be taught in 3 different classes, but they're not increasing in the depth of the knowledge. So, maybe in your later courses, increase the level at which you teach specific things. The other thing is we're going to come out with a new assessment tool that's specific to entry-level programs, so keep watch for that one. It's going to have some very specific things that are much more oriented to the more hands-on approach of most community college programs.
Ian, can I have a follow-up there? Because we had a question come in just after the presentation today, And it relates to something you just said, and I'm guessing this is from perhaps someone who's a little newer to the field, asking, can you help me understand what are you talking about when you talk about an entry-level course versus an advanced course? And I think some of us on the call are probably really familiar with that term, but that may be a new way of thinking about things for some of these folks.
That's a good question. Many graduate university programs, the students already have a domain expertise, and they just need to learn a tool to advance analysis within their program. So those programs tend to be more analytical, maybe using higher math skills, or maybe very research-oriented. So they're developing new models and new applications. The entry-level ones tend to bring in students where they learn the basic concepts of the topic as well as practicing those concepts with hands-on labs. So the entry-level, the awareness course is for non-working professional type people who want to just understand what spatial thinking and geospatial is, where the intro course gives you that broad basic skills coming in. I hope that answers.
I think that's a good answer, and I think that that's probably what the individual is getting at. And if that question doesn't answer it, contact one of the educational institutions you're interested in and ask their faculty that same question. But I think we're on the right track there. Phil,
Wes,
you touched on. Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just address one thing before we get too far into the questions, because I do want to have our panelists address the whole issue of the GTCM and what the heck the GTCM is, and because so many people didn't know what it was. Let me just frame what the competency model was supposed to do. Because the Department of Labor identified geospatial technology as a key career for the next 10 years, it was really important to define what the basic skills were that a typical GIS professional would have. And GIS professional has broken down by several of their different career levels and career and occupational specifications. There had never been anything before like that. There was never any definition of skills or what comprised what a geospatial technologist was. This was an attempt to actually define at a fairly refined level each of the different skills that a person in this occupation needs to have. So relating back to the first question, which is what do I need to teach? Well, you ought to look at the model and see what the industry believes are the skills that should be taught and should be acquired before getting into a job. And I served on the GTCM Model Committee, and we made a really good attempt at getting very, very specific at these individual skill sets. And it wasn't a skill set like you should know how to read a compass. I mean, it was very, very detailed in terms of knowing, like if you're doing remote sensing, knowing what a classified image would be and how you go about classifying a satellite image. I would advise people who are teaching at any level to just give a fairly, in-depth look at that model and what we tried to do with that. So I hope I answered some of that. And if they have any other follow-up questions, please put it in the chat window.
Okay, thanks, Joe, and thanks for inserting that. Phil, do you want to grab on to what Joe just said at all, or should we move on to another question?
Sure. I would add that another thing that the GeoTech Center has done is they've taken the DACM process that Ann talked about earlier to the next level. And I'm not sure this has ever been done before, but one of our researchers, John Johnson, has taken a number of DACMs dating back 10 years that have been done at different areas, combined them with the 4 or 5 DACMs that we've done since 2008. And he's extracted out what you might call competencies for the common competencies for a GIS technician. And the neat thing is he has vetted these. So, he put together, I forget how many, probably 200 people on all these panels combined together, 1 to 200 GIS technicians. And then he vetted that with a much wider audience and had something close to 1,000 responses come back with this. So we've taken the details you find in the GTCM and probably expanded on those and refined them a little bit to the next level. But the important thing is we vetted them with industry. And so by the time this process is done, this curriculum development thing that we're doing for this next year, And when we have this discussion, you know, late July 2012, we will have these 4 to 8 course modules out there that Ann and I have been referring to.
Thanks, Phil. I think the only thing I'd like to add to that is, and just to really simplify this down to the essence, for those of you that are really new and on this call and are not clear about everything we're talking about, it was important for those job categories to be created because it gives us a visible space to occupy in the labor market where our industry is clearly defined as an entity that has a defining set of competencies and purposes in the job market. The GTCM helps us define further what the building elements of those job categories are. The program assessment tool that Ann was talking about is a way for educators primarily, but certainly also for industry and individuals, to look at how is a course and or a program meeting my needs in preparing me for those competencies so that I can fill one of those job categories. So it all fits together, and it's quite complex, but it really does fit together kind of neatly. Phil, I really wanted to grab onto something you had talked about on one of your slides, which was trends that you've been seeing in community colleges in addressing the industry skill demands. Maybe you can reiterate a couple points you made and talk a little bit more about what you're seeing at the community college level.
Well, again, one of the things that we're seeing is a need for a lot of programming, and that's software drives this industry. I mean, GIS is a software industry, part of IT, and that's even the way the Department of Labor lumps this is under computer science, information technology. And scripting languages and programming languages, those are the most sought after needs, I would say, foremost right now. It's one thing to be able to just use a desktop GIS, a canned package, whether it be ESRI or Green Open Source or Intergraph or Small World. The next level is to be able to customize it, and so if you can take a basic vendor's package and customize it through programming languages or scripting, you are so much more valuable than the next person. Ann, do you have any comments?
I would say also, Joe mentioned mobile, but also web-based. So much is going onto the web, and skills that allow you to create applications that are not only desktop, but on the web, and then, of course, cloud computing to get familiar with and how that works with the geospatial industry, too.
Thanks, Ann. We have a lot of question themes, and there's 3 more that I'd like to try to get through before we wrap up today. I think this next one is a great one, and since we have so many newer folks on the call, I'd really like maybe Ann and Phil to take this one on. A number of folks have asked, how can I make the decision between a community college and a 4-year university experience? What should I be considering? And I think that's really valid for these folks. Ann, do you want to take that first?
I can, but one of the things, there are a few universities now that are offering bachelor degrees in GIS and other related. There's a lot that offer bachelor's degrees in a discipline with a minor or a certificate in GIS. I would say that anyone coming out, I'm very much in favor of everyone at least having a bachelor's degree. But if you are already prepared with a bachelor's degree in a discipline and are looking for a really interesting field, then go to the community college and add on to your domain skills those specific skills for geospatial technology.
Yeah, and again, it depends on where you're at in your own life cycle. If you're post-baccalaureate, you have to choose between maybe a master's degree or a certificate. Should it be a post-baccalaureate certificate or an undergraduate certificate? Again, some people, because of geographic and family commitments and geographic limitations, a community college, local community college, may be their only alternative.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm sorry, Phil, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, with distance learning there are so many options out there that there just weren't. I mean, just 5 years ago, there were 2 choices for a master's program. Now there's 167, I think, at last count. So need to avail themselves of that information.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things at play here. There's certainly geography and constraints based on one's individual life, and is online learning appropriate versus resident courses, and which does a particular student feel like they do better in. So that's certainly something to consider. And I just want to follow up with what Ann and Phil said, that an organization like Penn State, and of course we have to blow our own horn here for a second, has a postgraduate certificate in GIS education as well as a master's, and those two programs fulfill different needs for different individuals. Some students come and do our postbaccalaureate certificate and then eventually continue on to the master's, which had then formed the foundation for that master's experience. And we had another question I think dovetails nicely with this. An individual from South Africa asks, or mentions, there aren't a lot of educational opportunities in the geospatial realm in South Africa. How much of this is online? Well, I have to, of course, representing Penn State, say our entire program is online, so please visit us at www.pennstategis.com. But Phil and Ann, in your research and through the GeoTech Center, what portion of programs are you now seeing available to students online?
That's a really interesting question. Actually, as we go through and update the national map for colleges, we're asking that specific question, how much of their program? I don't know and knows for sure, but I know more and more of the colleges are putting their programs online too, at least one or two of their classes. And maybe that is a real good way to start, take an online class and see what you think of it, and then looking at your needs and what occupation you want to have at the end is to look at Penn State. I mean, coming out of with that kind of a degree, it's really I don't want to say a ticket to a really higher level occupation, but the workforce looks at different educational levels and degrees and the jobs that go along with them. So.
And Wes, I would second what Ann is saying, that we will have more precise information about exactly where these online degrees are being offered, or they be certificate, associate, baccalaureate, when we complete building our college database and then push that out on our website with the online map that's out there right now. So our users are be able to drill down in quite a bit more depth and find out where the contact is. I would mention right now one of our partners in Chula Vista, San Diego, California, offers a 100% online certificate. So you might look at that. That's Ken Yanow, Y-A-N-O-W, at Southwestern College in Chula Vista, California.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks, Ann. And I'd like to direct this. This might be our last question. We'll see how it goes. But this one's real specific, but I think it's really valid, and I think it's valid for the students and the educators. I'm just going to go ahead and read it verbatim. Four-year institutions are very interested in establishing articulations with two-year institutions for geospatial technology coursework. I can envision a pipeline from community college programs to colleges and universities in the future as this process matures and as the geospatial workforce needs increase. Can you bring us up to speed on what progress has been made along these lines? They're also thanking us for the webinar. I do just want to say one thing here. This is something that was always of interest to my former boss, David DiBiase, the notion that you should be able to take your coursework experience and it should be somewhat portable as much as can be allowed with institutional barriers. What do you see out there as trends with your work in geotech?
Well, one of the things I think, again, is that program assessment tool is going to allow high schools, colleges, and universities to look at the content of their courses and have some way to communicate exactly the level and type of content each of those courses have. So I can see that I hope that it's going to be a tool to help increase articulation. It is happening. It's usually on a very one-to-one instance right now. We have San Diego State and Southwestern articulate their 101 class. We hope in our activities in May 2012 to get educators together to really work on articulation. Bill?
Yeah, and also we have statewide initiatives. For example, in California, they're trying to come up with a career pathway where you can go from an associate's, 60-hour associate straight into a baccalaureate with little to no loss. And they're also trying to do that, drill that down all the way down to the geospatial technology field. So progress is being made, Wes, I would say nationwide, but it's a slow battle is all I can tell you. It's a slow process.
Thanks, Phil. We're at the top of the hour. I want to answer one real brief question. Somebody asks, what's Penn State's relationship to all of this? Well, if I haven't made that clear enough, Our former leader, David DiBiase, was very involved with Ann and Phil on this work and was leading up the programs on the DACM and some of the identification. And so we're, of course, really eager to be good neighbors and friends with all of our colleagues in the educational enterprise with this regard. I want to hand it back off to Joe for any closing remarks. And from the Penn State perspective, I just want to thank all of you for joining us, and we'll try to follow up with some of the unanswered questions in a later email. Thanks again.
Thanks, Wes, and we thank all of you for your questions. That's all the time we have. To all of you who joined us during the webinar, we appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Thanks to Penn State for sponsoring the webinar series, and certainly to Dr. Phil Davis and Ann Johnson from GeoTech Center today. We hope to see you again on the next Directions Media webinar. Please join us for our weekly Directions on the News podcast that's syndicated on iTunes, where we will keep you in touch with all things location. Bye for now, and be sure to tell a friend about Directions.